So we are joined from the shores of Lake Erie in Cleveland, Ohio, by my friend Kelly Horton, hospitality expert, published author, motivational speaker. We thank you so much for joining us today. We're in the hospitality, travel, and tourism career cluster, and I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central, Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, and the Academic Option Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you for taking some time for us today.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Now, obviously, we want to talk about the books you've written and all of your experience in event planning and restaurants. But give us a little background. You're from Chicago and went to Cleveland. You went to community college and then went to Cleveland State. So just give us a little timeline on that and your education background.
Definitely. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, as everyone wants to call it, Chirac. I grew up there first, and my grandmother moved us to West Virginia, where she legally adopted me, and that became my mother. I was in the foster care system for quite some time, and then my grandmother, who now is my mother, adopted me and moved me to the wild and wonderful hills of West Virginia, where I truly began to cultivate the gift of hospitality starting at the age of 15. I remember burning my clothes to stay warm in Chicago. And I remember saying to myself, if I can grow up out of this and grow up out of the hood per se, and to just make sure that I can make a difference. Because I didn't want to be a product of what I had went through. Not having a mom and dad, growing up in a rural area in West Virginia where literally when you get there, you don't make it out. You know, people say when you get there, you don't make it out of West Virginia. But there's a lot of great people that come from West Virginia that make it out. But in Fairmont, they would tell me, "You're here, you're stuck," and I was like, "No, I'm not." And so I created that love of hospitality with the church. I couldn't wait to get to church. I couldn't wait to help the older generation because to me, having a servant's heart is key. I can go on and on about how I would wake up early in the morning to be at church to help the senior citizens. They would be like, "You're the youngest one here. You know, you're here to help us." I'm like, "Yes, I am here to help. I'm here to serve. I'm here to have a selfless heart, not a selfish heart, but a selfless heart to where I can just have that compassionate to just do whatever is needed to be done."
Yeah, and then after high school, you went to a community college, and that's something we're really pushing here. We have some great community colleges here, and it just makes so much financial sense and really helps you ease into the hustle and bustle of a four-year university. I know you went to a major university at Cleveland State as well, so just take us through that community college to four-year university route as well.
Definitely. So I was in high school and I didn't get that experience that everyone else had with the SATs and just making sure they do everything right. Because I grew up in a very harsh environment, my grades were not the best. I'm just going to keep it honest. But I had an awesome financial aid advisor. Her name is Cindy Hudox, who took the time to cultivate a relationship and help me go to community college on a full ride scholarship.
Wow.
I'll never forget it. I can call her to this day on her cell phone and she'll pick up. And there was an awesome advisor I had as well, Memory Dobbs. Like I had people who wanted me to have scholarships, wanted me to go to college. And it was a stepping stone for me because little did I know I could have went to Harvard, but I wanted to go to a community college first because I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I didn't have the grades, but they had this academic program you could join and you could go to Harvard. And I was like, I'm going to go to Pierpont Community and Technical College. At the same time, it was associated with Fairmont State University. And I said, okay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to get my grades and I'm going to just work really, really hard. I had a great support system. I recommend going to a community college first before a four-year degree, before you decide to go to four-year college because you can learn so much that you need to succeed. So then it'll get you ready to go right into the four-year, and you're like, man, I got all my credits, so I only have to be in school for 2 more years. So that was my thinking, and I double majored both degrees.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah, and the cool part is in hospitality, you may not even need that four-year degree. You can get the associates and get the experience that they want. Even though we do have great hospitality degree programs in Mississippi, I know I shared the one with you at Southern Miss.
Mhm.
Because of our casino industry and hotel industry on the coast, they have a great partnership with them. Always great careers in hotel and gaming and and culinary there. And we actually, a lot of just to plug one of our Mississippi universities, our Mississippi University for Women, even though it does allow men, they have the only culinary arts bachelor's degree in the state of Mississippi. So we've had a lot of chefs and a lot of big time culinary people come out of there. Now, you've worked in event planning, you've worked in restaurants, and all of those not only have very transferable skills, but they also have careers that can be very lucrative and very rewarding. I went on my first cruise this past summer, and it was amazing the amount of people that were working in all the hospitality areas. And they were like, yeah, we get to go somewhere different all the time. So I have kids all the time that say they want to live in Vegas, they want to live in Atlanta, they want to live in Miami. And that is where a lot of these hospitality careers that pay so much money are.
Yes. I lived in California, so I did that for 6 years. And man, let me tell you, working for celebrities, I have enjoyed every moment. I'll do a little bit of name dropping. I've had the pleasure of working for Martin Lawrence, to CeCe Winans, to Hillary Clinton. The doors will open for you if you allow them. You just have to want it bad enough. And so if I can tell any student that, is you have to want it bad enough to succeed. And even my hospitality degree has me in the government. So I now work for the government. And I
Wow.
work on a larger scale with communications, and I work with community development. So I'm helping now bring back the light in the community that so much needs it in youth services and in senior services.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I want to hit on both of those areas because I think event planning is kind of an overlooked area. We have another friend of this class in Memphis that spent years working uh, for Hilton in sales, but because of her hotel experience, she moved into the private sector where she puts on events for a large corporation now. So a hospitality career is not just limited to that. And
Mhm.
then also, as somebody myself, I spent 11 years working in restaurants. Even as a part-time job, it can be very lucrative, and it's very good money and a great networking tool. So let's just start with the restaurants and talk about your restaurant experience because I know you did a lot with restaurants while you were in college and then after college.
Yes, I remember my first restaurant that I worked at. Oh, this is hilarious. I don't want to age myself, but it was called CJ Maggie's in West Virginia. And I remember being a waitress. And I just remember saying to myself, roll those silverware, mop that floor, do what you got to do to move to the next. And little did I know that I would go from CJ Maggie's, that restaurant, to then working for IHOP in management, which was a blast. I love pancakes. I still eat pancakes today. And then moving from IHOP to Q1227 restaurant, which is a established five-star restaurant in Roseville, California, where literally celebrities come left and right to eat Chef Q's food. I got to be the front desk hostess with the mostest, and I also was their event coordinator who planned their parties. So that's where I got to meet more celebrities, and just being able to shake their hand was an honor.
That's awesome. And now, and obviously, those skills translated into other areas, and then you worked in event planning as well. And people kind of overlook that. When you have convention centers, people host thousands of people. They've got to make sure everybody's fed. They got to make sure everybody has hotel information. They have to make sure they have transportation information. They have to make sure all the technology is working for the presenters. So there's a lot that goes into it for people working behind the scenes. So talk about the careers and event planning and what you did in events.
So I had my own company called Kelly's Events, and I did event planning for golly, weddings galore. It takes a lot. I remember that I had one bride who it was her first time ever getting married. She waited till she was in her late 50s to get married. And she literally had no unctions of how to do a wedding. And so what I did was I started from scratch, making sure that the foundation was built. What is the budget? Let's take the budget and let's go, what can we afford? What can we make look amazing on a budget and make it look like you spent millions? How can we bring the families together? Because at the end of the day, your events is not about you. It's about the people that you bring to the event. How do they feel? And when they walk away from the event, what did they learn? What did they gather? Did they meet somebody they didn't know before? Did they get a contact or a phone number? Because you never know who you can meet at your events or at the event that you're hosting. So you want to make sure that it's an environment that is welcoming, that is just a place where you're creating connections to last a lifetime. And that is exactly what I do. And sometimes I still do when I'm planning events in the government. Uh, my goal is how can I impact? Who's my target audience? What is my budget? What is my theme? What is my population? How many how many are coming out, or what am I preparing for? So I'm looking at all those different tools and mechanisms to put together to make sure that it's an event that will go off without a hitch. So I will write stuff down to notating it to time management. So you want to make sure you have all those skills to create a great, successful event because at the end of the day, you are better because of the best event that you host. So if your event ain't the best, then hey, you got to work on you first.
Yeah, and you made a good point there about knowing your target market because, like I said, I worked in restaurants a long time, and what you always used to blow my mind. I worked in a fine casual, I worked in an Italian, and no matter where I worked, and I'm not much of a drinker, but every time we'd have somebody from out of town, they'd always ask, even in the Italian restaurant, do you guys have any local beers?
Mm.
That's not something I would think of, but it was something that was asked about a lot. So knowing what people are going to order, knowing what people are, knowing to carry the right products, knowing that if people are going to ask for this, to sell it. And then the cool thing about it, like we've said, a lot of kids, this is one of their first jobs, even working at McDonald's or working at Applebee's. That's a great place to get some of these skills that employees look for. And honestly, if you have, or even when you're in college, if you're working in a restaurant part time, employers are going to want to see that because I have so many kids say, well, I don't have a lot of work experience. I've just worked in restaurants. Well, that's a lot bigger than they realize because you've worked face to face with customers. You've worked on your communication skills. You learn how to work on your feet and think quickly. So I think it's very underrated how great hospitality skills translate into other areas.
Definitely. Because you want to
Now,
be flexible.
uh, I'll go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, you just want to be really flexible when it comes to working in hospitality, because a party of four could become a party of 12, and you're like, what? Are you serious? That happened to me like multiple times, and I just had to go with the flow.
I had a party of 8 turn to a party of 31 one time.
Oh no.
Now, obviously, we'd be remiss if we did not talk about your books. You're a published author, written 2 books, and your Instagram author Kelly D Horton, and we'll give everybody that again. But you've written 2 books that really, I think it's cool because you tie in hospitality with inspiration. And one of them is called "Serve Me the Struggles," and I thought it was so cool. The cover is a server uh, bringing you the struggle. So, kind of talk about the message of your books. And I know you've spoken at a lot of events. And even though you talk about you want to have a message that gears toward women, it can really resonate with anyone. So
Mhm.
just tell us about the books and where the inspiration came from and kind of what the message is.
Definitely. So I'll start with my first book, which is called Happiness Starts With You, 10 Tips to a Happier You. I wrote that book at the most depressing time of my life. I had just moved to California. And my adopted family, I love them dearly, but I wanted to know who was my mother. So I moved to California to meet my real mother's family.
No
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Wow.
And they have been searching for me for 20 years. Last time they knew of me, I was 4 years old. So I remember being depressed and I wanted to write and give principles and tips to help people heal. I wanted also them to learn that don't put yourself on the back burner, but put yourself forward. You know, when you look at a house, you got a porch and then you got the inside. Well, a lot of people, we become the doormat and we don't want to go inside from the porch. And so my principles in that book is teaching them how to put themselves first and allow themselves to go in the threshold and go in the living room, go into the kitchen and know that you deserve that. So I use that metaphor. And I wrote it and I wanted to just give people joy, not happiness because it was a small entity of it could be life things that are making you happy, but joy, that joy lasts forever. So that's the first book. The second book, oh my Lanta. I have been trying to write that book for years, and it was finally birthed out of tragedy. I have lost my sister. I lost two sisters. I lost them a year and 3 days apart. And I'm the oldest. And I remember thinking to myself, they died very tragically. Um, and I knew, serve me the struggles, please. Because I remember the days where I had to wash the floor with my bare hands in the restaurants. I remember the days where I went home crying because, hey, work was hard and I had to learn to toughen up. And I remember saying, serve me the struggles, please, because my struggles makes me who I am. So anyone that's out there that can hear me, I want you to know that your struggles make you who you are. So if you're in a struggle right now, just know that it won't last forever. It's only for a season. And you can let your struggle be the mountain that you climb over and say, hey, I made it to the other side. And so Serve Me the Struggles was written for truly people who need to know that, hey, just because you're in a bad circumstances doesn't mean you'll always be there. So giving the
Wow.
motivation.
Wow. And like I said, and we'll definitely we'll share your IG where they can see all that before we get done here. Now, I do have some questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can.
Yeah.
Uh, this is Janila Carter. She's in ninth grade, one of our cheerleaders here. And I think that you just answered a little bit of this, but she asked, as you were starting your career in hospitality, what were some of the biggest discouragements you met?
That's a good one. If I can be honest, one of my biggest discouragements was watching my counterparts who did not look like me make more tips than I did. I didn't understand it because I worked in a predominantly Caucasian area. And so I watched them get all the tips and I watched them get all the better tables. And I didn't get the good tables. But I had to change that mindset. I had to say every table I get is a good table. And if I don't get tip, I'm going to give them plus one service, 100% service. So they'll come back and ask for me. And that's what I had to learn. So that would be one of my biggest adversities that I was affected when I started in my waitressing career.
Well, and I can tell you, as somebody that served for a long time, the three biggest tips I ever got were on tables that I did not see it coming.
Wow.
So it really, again, serving is very rewarding. It's, if you're a social person, it's a lot of fun most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. But it's a completely mental game. If you,
Definitely.
it's just like sales. If you go into every situation expecting the best, it is amazing how much money you can make. If you go in dreading it, and always, I got to joke with my friend Robin Dolan. Me and her worked together at a restaurant for 7 years. And I remember one day she was having a bad day and she sees this table sit down and she's just like, look, I can't do it. I want to go. So just take this table. $40 tip. And if she had stayed, she would have had it. And I still kid her about that to this day. But again, it's all a mental game. If you go in expecting bad things happen. If you go in expecting good things, bad things happen sometimes, but the good always outweighs the bad. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's really cool. I like this one. This is Amos Varnado, one of our football players here. And he asked, what do you find most interesting about hospitality?
The food. So at the end of the night, I enjoyed the food and I enjoyed the people. But I really enjoyed the food because I got to take home some really good food that normally, purchasing could be like, oh, that's a lot of money for a steak, but you got a steak discounted, okay? So I would say the food. And I also would say the people, making connections, building relationships that last for a lifetime.
Yeah, I've had people that have spoken in this class that I met while I was in the restaurant. And I
Yes.
and I agree on the food because if you want to learn some new if you want to learn some new dishes, work in a restaurant. It's amazing the food you don't know about and you get to try. And then you go out of town, you want to try it somewhere else. So I agree 100%. I like this one. This is Callista Brown. She's in ninth grade, and she asked, "Did you face any judgment from your family when you decided to be in this field?"
Yes, my mother, oh, bless it. She got so angry at me because she says, "You got all those degrees and you're working at a restaurant." She didn't know that it was a stepping stone for me. She didn't understand that I needed a pivotal moment, per se. And so I apologize. I just had a client just came in, so do forgive me.
Oh, you're fine.
But I I literally remember saying to myself, "Golly, mom, if you just let me live my life, it's on my terms." And there may be you all may be sitting in classroom and pick a job that your parent didn't want you to choose, but it could be that pivotal moment for you because that job that I worked at in restaurant helped me and introduced me to another job where I was a director. Because they saw how I communicated at the restaurant and loved the guest, they were like, "We need you in our businesses." So I remember becoming a director in California after they met me at the restaurant. So you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because even I didn't face it from my family. I faced that from people outside looking in because I was on staff at a university for 4 years, and people think I'm joking. I made almost double the money that I was making working in a restaurant, working fewer hours. So if you're good at it, it can be very lucrative. And like you said, if you're really good at it, people will find you and move you up. Here in Mississippi, like I mentioned, we have large casinos owned by MGM and Harrah's and the big hospitality conglomerates. If you're really good, they're always looking to move people into the corporate side that know their business. So it
Right.
can be extremely lucrative. Society may be painting it a certain way, but the amount of money that can be made is actually astronomical.
Definitely.
I got time for one more. This is Cameron Job. He's one of our football players, and he asked, "What was your biggest inspiration to write the books?"
Oh, that's a good question. Oh gosh. In all honesty, my biggest inspiration was you all, the next generation who I have coming and what they're getting ready to do. I wanted to make sure that the next generation, whether you be in high school, college, middle school, maybe you're even in your late 60s or 70s, whatever it may be. But my goal was my target audience was the people that were in high school, in college, getting ready to go to college. How can I give you hope in the midst of your lives that give you joy? And so I wrote it for the next generation, and then they are my inspiration because they are the future that holds the key to everything that we're getting ready to do next.
Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. Obviously, your Instagram has all of your information where they can buy the books and see great content you put up. Author Kelly D. Horton at Instagram. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and all of your links are there. Really cool stuff, and I follow you. And again, I'm always about encouraging kids to put positive things in their life. So even if you don't want to be in hospitality, follow people like you. See positive things that can really put a smile on your face. But the last thing before we go, obviously, it's Women's History Month, and we want to celebrate all the great women of our country that work so hard to keep things going. And this is a great field that needs more professional women. It needs more intelligent women. It needs, strong women to get in there and really make it a more diverse face. You mentioned about when you worked at the restaurant how people that didn't look like you. Well, if we get more people that look like you in the field, those problems will become fewer and fewer. So why should these kids really consider getting into this field that could really propel them into other areas?
Why? Why not? That's what I would say. Why not go into the field of hospitality? Because hospitality, you're going to use it the whole entire life. So, you're probably in a math class right now and you're like, man, am I really going to use this math? Yes, you're going to use it when it's time to go shopping. But you're definitely going to be able to use hospitality because I use hospitality in church. I use hospitality in government. I use hospitality in my family organizations, with my friends, with my business. You're going to need hospitality because at the end of the day, what is the root cause of hospitality? It is servant, being a servant. Once you understand to be a servant, no longer to be served, a servant and serve others, that's where you really get to look at the crossroads and see which way you want to go, even if there's a stop sign coming your way. To be able to serve someone is key.
And always tip your servers.
Yes, please tip. If there's any time you can tip, if you order a steak and you tip $5, I'm coming after y'all because that steak was $50 and y'all gave 10%. So
Yeah.
make sure you get 10%.
All right, so I know you got to get back to work. Thank you so much for fitting us in your tight schedule, all the way from Cleveland, Ohio. Kelly Horton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I talk to you soon, buddy.
You too.